Wouldn't it be great to manage your portfolio on one platform? Well, now you can trade all in one place on Robinhood. That means you can trade individual stocks and ETFs and also buy and sell crypto using seriously powerful and intuitive tools at one of the lowest costs on average without needing to manage multiple apps. Robinhood makes withdrawing and depositing crypto seamless. Send crypto to your Robinhood account or send crypto from your Robinhood account to other wallets without deposit or withdrawal fees from Robinhood. Trade all in one place. Get started now on Robinhood. Trading crypto involves significant risk. Crypto trading is offered through an account with Robinhood Crypto LLC. Robinhood Crypto is licensed to engage in virtual currency business activity by the New York State Department of Financial Services. Crypto held through Robinhood Crypto is not FDIC insured or SIPC protected. Network fees may apply to crypto transfers. Crypto transfers may not be available to all customers. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Securities trading is offered through an account with Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, a registered broker-dealer.
You're about to make a trade. Which you do you listen to? Is it get optioning those options? Or let's do a little research. Learn more at finra.org/tradesmart.
Hello, my name is Damon Friedman, co-founder and president of SOF Missions. As a 20-year veteran within Special Operations, I've gone through many challenges due to my military service and time in combat. We felt called to start SOF Missions to serve our fellow brothers and sisters in arms, focusing on suicide prevention and resiliency. Our mission at SOF Missions is to empower warriors to find purpose and be resilient. Since 2011, when we started the organization, almost 3 million men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the scars of war take a toll on their psychological, physical, social, and spiritual health. Many veterans feel a sense of hopelessness and a loss of purpose when they return to civilian life. They feel isolated and alone, unable to reconnect. And in the greatest of tragedies, over 20 veterans lose all hope and take their own lives. Our goal at SOF Missions is to provide veterans the tools and resources so that they don't become a statistic. We offer a unique approach to combating veteran suicide through a whole health, intradisciplinary model. The Be Resilient program is a 4-pillar methodology that addresses the areas of psychological, physical, social, and spiritual wellness. We provide care through 3 delivery methods: medical clinics, retreats, and educational training. Since we started back in 2011, we have been able to reach veterans in all 50 states and have served over 3,000 veterans through the Be Resilient program. Being resilient is a multifaceted and complex issue. We know that to find a lasting solution, we have to address the whole warrior. Many challenges cannot be solved by providing the treatments and modalities of just one component, but by tackling them all. Now, we've expanded our services to include law enforcement and first responders. Together, we can make a lasting impact in the lives of warriors across the nation. To learn more, visit our website at sofmissions.org.
All right. Welcome back.
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation. The Misfit Nation Show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, Welcome to the Misfit Nation show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisfitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation show. It's your Thursday after dinner edition. We know you have other places you could be flying, but tonight you're here with us on the Misfit Nation, collecting your frequent flyer miles, and we thank you for that. As we say in our opening statement, a day tomorrow is better with you than it is without you. So if you're going through that darkness, you feel that spiral, don't make a permanent solution to that temporary problem. I know it's tough. I know us saying it's a temporary problem even hurts more, but that problem can go away with help. Find the help you need. Call 988. Take the option that works for you. If you don't want to call 988, contact us, info@themisfitnation.com, Stephen@themisfitnation.com, or Jake@themisfitnation.com, and we will be there for you. We will get you the help you need so that you can be here tomorrow with us. Keep that in mind. Tonight, we have a powerhouse panel, I should say. We're going to be talking about injustice in the military. We have a former naval officer falsely accused and now an outspoken advocate for justice, a retired police officer and mother fighting for her son's freedom after wrongful conviction under UCMJ, and a retired sheriff's detective and now private investigator with decades of criminal case experience. So without further ado, let's welcome Arvis Owens and Chris Gill right now, and then hopefully we'll have Holly in a minute. Welcome, fellas.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us on.
It's great to have you here, and I'm glad we got it going this time, Arvis. Last time we had a big technical glitch. This time we got three of us at least. We almost had all four of us, but hopefully the fourth will come in. Arvis, I'll let you start off. Tell the audience a little more about you from as far back as you want to go to how we started to get to this process.
Sure. So I'm a 1995 Naval Academy graduate. I'm originally from Beaumont, Texas. In 2012, I was falsely accused by a civilian coworker. I was taken to court-martial. I testified in my own defense. I hired an attorney. I fought those charges. I was facing 30 years in prison. The same panel, we call them panels instead of juries in the military. In the military, you don't need a unanimous verdict to get convicted. So at that time, it was 2/3. It's 3/4 now. They found me not guilty of all of the sexual assault charges except one. And during sentencing, they came back to the judge and said, "We made a mistake. Can we revoke that?" I was facing 30 years in prison. I got 0 days. They gave me a dishonorable discharge. I was forced to register as a sex offender. I started reaching out for help. I couldn't find any, so I decided to become the advocate that I was looking for. And the groups that I went to started sending me other men, young men, who also were falsely accused in the military. And so that's when I started that.
Wow. Pretty tough. Go over to Chris here. Chris, tell us a little more about your background and how you got into investigating these allegations and trying to clear some people's names.
I was a sheriff's detective. I worked for the Toledo Police Gang Unit. I was assigned to the Toledo Police Gang Unit from the Lucas County Sheriff's Department in Toledo, Ohio. While there, I became a national speaker on criminal street gangs and security threat groups. I started putting all these pieces together once I became a PI. I got injured in the line of duty. I was ran over doing a search warrant. I couldn't fulfill my obligation as a police officer anymore. It took me quite some time to get back into the fold of investigating. But once I did, we started looking at these cases, and we were seeing that not all the evidence was being presented or followed up on. And a lot of these people were going to prison that did not belong there. And there's some are still there. So we started looking into these, and we became passionate about, we follow the rule of law, but we're passionate about keeping these people that are innocent out of prison, and so they can fulfill a full life.
Outstanding. And I know for me, I've seen things like this happen in especially the late 90s in the Army, when the sexual harassment, sexual assault charges were coming out against drill sergeants and such. a lot of people were throwing those accusations out there to try maybe get out of something else. And then I watched one man go for, as a staff sergeant, go all the way through trial, get convicted. And then at his sentencing, the accuser finally came out and said, I lied. None of this is true. But by that point, his whole reputation is done. Everyone in the military, you're convicted as soon as you're accused of something, basically. Because all your friends and your unit will think, oh, that person's dirty in this. So that dude was dirty in everyone's mind except his closest friends until that day. And then he got out because of it.
Rich, it's even worse than that. As an example, we have men who've gone to trial, been found not guilty. The military does something called titling. So a lot of civilians don't know what that is. Law enforcement does. Where the difference is, in a civilian court, you have to be convicted and found guilty, and then they title you. They put you in law enforcement databases. So you can't work with kids, can't own a firearm, can't work with law enforcement. In the military, just starting an investigation, they title you. So imagine getting investigated, going to court martial, getting found not guilty, and you still get titled for 40 years. So it looks like you were convicted, even though you were found not guilty. So we've had cases with men who had DNA proof found guilty. People who had video evidence of their accuser confessing that they made it up, they still were found guilty. And a lot of it stems from pressure that came from Congress. I don't want to get political, but it did come from Congress to get convictions regardless of what the evidence showed. And that's one of our biggest problems with it, is we follow the rule of law. And there's a quote I love that says, liberty and justice for all, right? Not for some, all.
You know, on the civilian side, it's almost like you're not innocent until proven guilty any longer. You're guilty until you prove your innocence. And that's become too common of a theme in the courts nowadays. And it's very hard on defense attorneys and investigators on both sides to get through that.
I think in the green room, we kind of hit on this a little bit, that social media aspect. Now, as soon as something happens, it's all over everywhere. All the sleuths on the street are already filming something as soon as it happens. So no matter what side you get into court, there's 9 other sides that you're already seeing.
Right. You're already convicted in the public opinion.
Exactly. Right. It's hard to stay out of that eye right now. Do you find it even harder now for the military side as well because of that?
It is. And a lot of it stemmed, I don't know if you recall the Me Too movement when that started. And so before I say more, I want to say our heart goes out to true victims. Is nobody wants someone to be raped or sexually harassed, sexually assaulted. And where there's evidence that proves it, we believe there should be an investigation, there should be a conviction, there should be a prosecution. So I want to say that first. But what happened with the Me Too movement was they picked 2 metrics. They picked prosecutions and convictions. And they said, we want both to go up. And as an example to your audience, is there was a snapshot that looked at the number of cases going forward for sexual assault. And at the snapshot, 40% were going to court with no probable cause, 0 probable cause. They looked at another snapshot and it was 35%. And so what I try and tell people is the police need probable cause to pull you over, right? To arrest you. And these men were going to court and being convicted when there was 0 probable cause. And so that's hard for some people to wrap their mind around. But Chris understands that, and it blows my mind that people could turn a blind eye to something like that.
Well, a lot of times what we're finding is the investigators are, pretty much throwing their hands up and putting it on the court to make a determination on whether these people are, need to be charged or not to be charged. And sometimes, the evidence doesn't always meet the charge, and they're still being charged anyway. So they're kind of throwing these people into the system that shouldn't be there if they did just a little bit more investigation.
Right. In fact, I want to talk about Holly's son. His name is Robert Andrew Condon. But before I do, I want your audience to imagine, right? Just don't think about sexual assault for a second, but imagine a time in your life where someone lied about you. And when they lied, people believed it, even though you had evidence to show that it was not true. So I want you to frame that context. And so a little bit about Holly's son, Robert Andrew Condon. She calls him Andy. He had a woman that he was seeing, and he broke up with her. And she was upset. So she comes over to his place, and she tries to seduce him. And he says, "No, I don't want that." So she's concerned. She has some anxiety. He lets her come in. She falls asleep on his chest. Tries to seduce him again. He says no. She leaves and goes to civilian hospital, where she wants to file charges. She claims that he bit her, punched her, kicked her, raped her, etc. No marks, mind you, but that's what she says. And they said, "Well, we'll pick him up right away." She goes, "That's not what I want." She goes to the military hospital. The same nurse, so the nurse who does the examination for rape, she not only finds that there's no evidence of rape, there's no evidence of sex of any kind. Wow. In fact, she's so concerned, she brings in an agent to double check her work to verify. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. They brought a special camera from Quantico, Virginia, because they wanted to see some of these marks she said was there. They looked at it, and not only did they not find marks, but they knew the camera was working because it showed the layers of her tattoo. Wow. And yet, he was still convicted, sentenced to 30 years. Chris has a lot more insight because he and his partner, Jay, investigated this case. And I want to say this last thing before I turn it over to Chris, is Holly was so concerned about the charges that she trusted Chris and Jay implicitly. Like if they came back and said her son was guilty, she would have abandoned him, right?
Yes.
But that's not what happened. And I'll turn it over to Chris to share what he found during that investigation.
In this case, it was a very bizarre case. First of all, the stuff that the alleged victim was claiming was unfounded. We couldn't find it. There was no. She was claiming she was beat with a paddle. There was no that she bled profusely. There was no blood. There was no marks. She claimed that he held her up with one hand, mind you. Now, this is a 125-pound woman. He held her up with one hand and beat her with the other. Now, her feet was off the floor. Now, Andy's in good shape. But he's not an overly big guy. Right. And if you could take a 50-pound dumbbell and try holding it up for a minute, and using your other hand to try to smack something, see how difficult that would be. And not only that, there was no marks on the neck. There was no marks on her whatsoever. Even the SAE nurse could not find any new or old bruising. This case I can't believe he's where he's at with all the evidence that is in this case. So he's just, and I think in the court trial, there was limited testimony. I think the judge allowed limited testimony of, when they were cross-examining her on the stand. And I think that had a lot to do with his conviction.
Right. I'll share a nugget too. That is why one of the pieces of advice I give to any young man who's falsely accused is to go out and hire a private investigator. If you can't afford a lawyer, of course, we recommend you get a private attorney, but if you cannot, you get a private investigator, you get a paralegal. And I'm going to tell you why is Chris and his partner, Jay, were able to find out that his primary accuser, Andy's primary accuser, had a felony conviction. And that information was withheld from the family so that they could not use it in court. And that felony conviction means that she had a fraudulent enlistment in the Air Force. And what makes it even worse is she was training to be an air traffic controller. So think about the military. You get a secret clearance. You get this background check. So for one of the most elite jobs,
several levels,
there was another accuser who was forced to be an accuser in Andy's case because she had committed minor misconduct. Now, she was an officer herself, and basically it was a get out of jail free card, Rich. It was one of the things in the military is if you had minor misconduct, it'd be forgiven. If you wanted a transfer, done. You got 50 to 100% VA disability. You got cash. You got job placement. And these are the type of incentives that they put out in the system. And unfortunately, this young man was sentenced to 30 years in prison. his entire 30s have been spent in prison over a lot. And there's so many men like him. And the American people, they just don't know. They don't know. And if you were to tell them, I talked to a reporter today, and they want to turn a blind eye because, and I hate to expand this bigger than it is, but I have found in family courts, men are not being treated fairly. And this is an extension of that. And I'll give an example. In the military, one of the last NDAAs that was signed, the military made sexual harassment punishment by 2 years in prison and a dishonorable discharge. I want you to think about that for a second. There are some people who believe that if you look at them too long, if they're wearing a certain top or a certain bottom, and you look at them too long, that's sexual harassment. I did an interview where a young man shared with me in Great Britain, they have female joggers running, and if someone catcalls them, they get arrested.
Wow. I've seen where they put undercover officers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I tell your audience you have to care, because it starts in the military today and it's in the civilian place tomorrow. And if you don't say anything now, that when you're falsely accused, when you're in prison, or someone you love, there won't be anyone to help if you don't help.
Wow.
In cases like this, when you're going into the military, if you're a parent, you're going to be worried about your child, male or female. Either way, not knowing that they're not being supported in the military, like they should be. There's a lot of cases that they are legitimate cases, but there's a lot of cases that aren't legitimate cases that are still followed through with. Unfortunately, Andy was sentenced to 30 years in prison for his charge. Now there's sexual predators, child molesters that are getting 3.5 years compared to Andy's 30. We can't figure out why this is happening. That's a great difference.
It is
between an adult sex assault and a child sex assault. Why such the graphic difference?
And I'm glad Chris pointed that out. I'll share this with you. He keeps being denied parole or probation. And what happens in a military prison, they want you to sign a confession that you did it. And what they hold over your head is training. If you don't do the training, you're not eligible for parole. But in order to get them to pay for the training, you have to sign a confession, whether you did it or not. Now, Holly went and paid for the training herself. They don't tell you that part. You could pay. And then they refused to accept it. And so to Chris's point, not only does he get 30 years, but they don't want to let him out. He was a distinguished officer, many deployments to Afghanistan, had never had a blemish on his record. Several awards. And so I'll go back to that felony conviction. That was formally delivered to the family the day before what's called the convening authorities action. There was a time where the general or admiral in charge could look at the case, but because it had not been provided during the court and it had been requested a year in advance, it couldn't be used on appeal. It couldn't be used to question her motives. And those are some of the tactics, Rich, that they use to ensure they get a conviction. And I can tell you more about the origins of how this all started and then how it got worse and worse.
I was looking at civilian law. Civilian law, that would be a Brady violation. So not producing that is bad, but in the military, they seem to just go along to their own beat. They do what they want to do. And, I've never been, I have all the respect in the world for military men and women in this world, that we wouldn't be where we're at without them. It's just a different world. A lot of people don't understand that, but, coming from a civilian side and looking in, it's really different.
Right. And Chris and Rich, what I tell people is I also love the military. I tell people that love still doesn't leave you, but you can love someone and still not like what they've done. You can love someone and still demand that they make the changes that they need. The idea is, I like to use the metaphor of a house. They want to get rid of rats, but they burn the entire house to the ground with the families, right?
Right.
And then they would like to say, well, we won't do that again. Now, we might destroy your car, but we won't burn any more houses down. but we don't want to correct all the wrong that we did. We don't want to let a guy who be sentenced to 30 years out. We don't want to say, and Rich, the idea is recruiting. So the American people, I want you to imagine that it's happened to someone you love. And are you going to trust the military and allow your son or your daughter to join if you know they can be falsely accused and wrongly convicted?
Correct. Yep.
And so they don't want to admit that. So the idea was there was a Me Too movement. There was a belief that the military wasn't taking this seriously. They threatened to pull command authority away from the generals and the admirals. And they go, the only way we need prosecutions and convictions. We have a letter from the then vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and it went to a senator of New York who said, we're getting convictions in cases that civilians won't take. And here's the big thing, but they never say how. How are you getting convictions in cases that civilians won't take? And I'll give you an example of one. And these are all the services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. Andy was in the Air Force. We have a case, an Army case, where a young man was accused by a coworker. This is an Army case in Kentucky. So civilian police come to him. He doesn't request a lawyer. He doesn't enact his Miranda rights. He immediately goes down and gives a statement. I didn't do this. This is what happened. They bring his accuser in, and she admits on video she was in danger of being kicked out of the military for physical fitness failure, and that it was consensual. So the civilian police drop all charges. They had a CID agent in the room listening. So a year later, the military refiles those charges because it's not considered double jeopardy. The military and the state are different. And they won't allow him to use the video evidence of the confession, and they won't allow the CID agent to testify. He's found guilty, sentenced to 5 years.
Wow, that was here. That was right where I am right now.
Right.
Yes.
And so when you tell people this, they watch Law and Order and all these different television shows, and they were like, this could never happen.
Yeah.
And you go, here's something. There's a 2004 Innocence Protection Act that was passed. So every American in every territory or state is covered by an Innocence Project or Conviction Integrity Unit, except the United States military. The military is not. And when there was pressure, so I give a little bit of grace to the generals and the admirals, is because they were pressured to do this. And I'll tell you a story that blew me away. I had a mother who came to me and said, Arvis, I'm so thankful you were falsely accused. So think, I'm like, what? Like that doesn't sound good. Right. And she goes, look, I trusted the generals, but they let my son down. And so if you hadn't been falsely accused, who would come forward to do this, to be a voice? Because, Rich, a lot of people are afraid. And I want to thank your show for doing that suicide prevention clip at the beginning, because a lot of these young men consider it. They want to make a permanent step for something that we can fight toward fixing. And so I do want to encourage people to take advantage of those resources.
Definitely. I was looking at the stats on wrongful convictions just on the civilian side. It's between 1% and 5% wrongful convictions of false convictions. That equates to thousands on the civilian side. If you just do 1% to 5% in the military, that's still going to be thousands.
Right.
You have a robust military.
And again,
that's that are affected.
There was a defense advisory committee for the investigations, prosecution, and defense of sexual assault. So think federal judges, state judges, prosecutors. They found, when they did the student snapshot in the military, 40% and 35%. So that's one of the challenges, is that others on the other side was like, hey, it's only a 2% false allegation rate. Well, what about when you put all the incentives? And let me give your audience this example. The military was doing training where the person who was penetrated, if they had one alcoholic beverage, they couldn't consent. Now, the person penetrating could, but if they had one alcoholic beverage. So what I tell people for them to understand is you can drive legally in any state or territory after one alcoholic beverage. You go out for your anniversary. You go out for your birthday and have one drink. Is your spouse now a predator? That's what they were teaching. And I even have a little video clip. It's on a Facebook page where they did site visits. And the military troops were like, we're tired of these false allegations. And the panel, that DAC iPad I told you, tried to explain it away and said, well, it's training. They're telling them if you have one alcoholic beverage, you can't consent. Even though the toxicology report says you weren't drugged, everything was clear, the person's still found guilty. And you go, how does that happen? How does that happen in the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Well, it depends on who's looking at the case.
That's right. That's right. And I would tell you guys, I am thankful we've had generals come to us, judges, prosecutors, investigators even, who've said, look, we want to do something, but we don't want to lose our job. We don't want to get in trouble, jeopardize our retirement. And so I do understand that there's people who want to support us. I even have victims advocates who are coming to us. So one of the documents I typically share is we had a former victims advocate. They were coaching accusers how to win their case with zero evidence. Wow. So consider that for a minute. How to win your case with zero evidence. They had private Facebook groups and things like that. And she was upset. She said, this is wrong. So she came to us with the information. We wouldn't have had it.
Right.
And the crazy part is that it blows your mind that true victims, they struggle to be believed because people are pushing these narratives. And so that's the idea. We want to get the American people involved. We want you to share and view this podcast and share it with anybody, share it with your politicians, because it's important to put the message out there, and it's important to fight to do something so that our sons and our daughters are protected.
Definitely.
You know, you're not going to stop these false allegations, you know, whether it be caught by a boyfriend, morning after regret, whatever may have you. You're not going to stop these until there's consequences put on the person that are making these accusations. And if you continue to allow them to do this and not make them face a consequence, it's going to continue. Not only continue, it's probably going to get worse because they know they're getting away with it.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. In fact, there was a recent news article that I shared with someone where I think he was a reservist, an Army reservist doctor, was falsely accused by a young lady. Now, it was investigated by the civilian side, who quickly determined, hey, this is a false allegation. So they prosecuted her. How many days in jail you think she got?
No idea.
30. She got 30.
30 days.
30 whole days. So it was, he resigned his commission from the reserve because he didn't want to be caught up in that. And then the civilian police cleared him, and they were like, well, 30 days in probation. And so we're I believe Chris is exactly right. Until you put some teeth behind that punishment, look, you have regret, you're angry. We've had custody charges. We have a young man, his wife gets pregnant. She's having an extramarital affair, she gets pregnant. He finds out it's the other person's child. He files for divorce. He gets awarded custody of their daughter, their shared daughter. Think about in this day and age when a man gets custody of a child, especially a daughter. So I'll leave it at that. So he gets custody of the daughter, and then she files sexual assault charges against him. She goes to 2 separate police precincts. They investigate, so there's nothing here. She goes to the military, of course we'll prosecute. Her attorneys go to his attorneys and says, if you give up custody of the daughter, all charges are dropped. He goes, no. In fact, he says, F you. He said it. And he goes to court. He's found guilty. So there's a twist. He gets sentenced to prison. His mom picks up the phone and calls the lover and says, and we have that recording too, where he admits he received $10,000 and he lied in military court. Because the military doesn't have jurisdiction over civilians, that they can't prosecute you. Now, they could refer it over to a civilian prosecutor, but they didn't. So she gets the recording, she submits it to the military, and they have a hearing. He admits that it wasn't $10,000, that was one installment. He got $100,000 and he lied. He admits that out loud. We have that too. The judge in the case says, well, I can't do anything. Can't order a new trial, I can't do anything. I don't have the jurisdiction. So we ask, why would you hold a hearing to hear evidence that you couldn't do anything with? That doesn't make any sense. He goes to his congresswoman. She does a congressional inquiry. The Air Force isn't there, the Air Force case. says, well, he could do it, but he uses discretion not to. And then he files a federal lawsuit, and they said, well, he didn't submit it early enough. So again, I asked your audience, why would you hold a hearing to hear evidence that wasn't submitted on time when you couldn't do anything to? And he gets stonewalled because the Department of Justice defends DOD in federal lawsuits. So unless you have a lot of money or you know somebody, things are not going to go your way.
Well, a lot of times that's what happens. The more money you throw at it,
right,
the better you're off you're going to be. And a lot of these people don't have that. They don't have the means to do that.
They don't. And I'll share a story with a guy who was a prosecutor for the 82nd Airborne. He was an Army major prosecutor. He got accused by his ex-wife of sexually abusing their daughter by tickling her. They call it tickle torture is what she called it. Mm-hmm. And she said not only did he abuse her with the tickle torture, but in the presence of two social workers, female social workers. Even though they both testified and said that's not true, he got convicted. He got 20 years. He's still in prison as well. So think about that. You said he abused her by tickling her in the presence of social workers who testified, who said that didn't happen, convicted. If this was a movie, I wouldn't believe it was a movie. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, why go to the lengths to put these people in prison when they know they're innocent? Why is this happening?
Here's the origin story. So you had the Me Too movement. You had a survey that came around in 2009, 2010. And they asked people, hey, have you been sexually harassed, sexually assaulted? And a bunch of people said yes. And so they took that survey and they extrapolated out and said, if you apply this across the whole military, then this is how much sexual abuse you have. But yet I only see this many prosecutions and this many convictions. So what up? So Senator Gill of New York, who wanted to run for president at one point, she took Hillary Clinton's seat. She since won a couple of re-elections. She decides to make that her mandate. So she rouses people in the Senate, in the House, the President Obama at the time, and they started going after the military for accountability. Basically, if you didn't send a case to court, it got reviewed by your boss. And then if he didn't or she didn't, their boss. And they looked at your conviction percentage, much like playoff record. Before you went up for promotion to general officer or admiral in the Navy, they looked at your conviction rate for sexual assaults. Think about that. Like, who does that? But they did do it. And then they slowly started changing the laws so that they could get to fit the narrative. So there's something called the good soldier defense, where you get to talk about your accomplishments. They changed the law. You can only talk about that after you're convicted for sentencing. But an accuser can have anybody say any good things about them. Another thing they did was they hired experts to explain away behavior. Hey, this person's story changed 6 times. Well, an accuser's memory can be challenged. And so they had experts to explain that away. Wait a minute. She said she drank too much, but the toxicology report shows she doesn't. Well, her anxiety could have kicked in. And so they just set up different laws in order to be able to convict more people. And that's what happened.
So beyond a reasonable doubt is thrown out the window.
It is thrown out the window. It is thrown out the window. And another thing that people they're not aware of in the military, I call it the non-judicial punishment shuffle. So now what they tend to do more is, let's say people are looking at them now because of the probable cause thing, right? Congress people have said, hey, this looks really bad. So they'll kick you down to non-judicial punishment where the burden of proof is preponderance there. So it's less and they can kind of, but if you turn it down, they will still send you to court-martial for the same case that they found 0 probable cause.
Wow.
And there's been no new evidence. There's one case, he was a Navy SEAL, Keith Berry. You can look up his case. This guy falsely accused and wrongly convicted. He gets sent to prison. He gets released. He can't find a job driving for Uber. The 2-star Admiral, Admiral Lorge, and I have a copy of the affidavit, after he retires, writes it and said, I wanted to do the right thing. but I was scared of pressure from the President Obama as well as Senator Gillibrand. And he was advised by the senior JAG and her deputy to not interfere. His case was overturned. Guess how many cases they reviewed of those two senior JAGs after they found malfeasance in his case?
Probably zero.
Zero. And they sealed the record. They sealed the record so you can't see it.
Of course.
We have a question from the audience right now. It's from Brian Nelson. He wants to know, are there women being falsely accused by men in the same manner?
I have one. I have one female that I have worked with. She was falsely accused by an ex after she moved on. But so far, it's like 99.9% men. But I do have the one female.
You haven't noticed, Holly has joined us. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you.
You notice Holly joined.
Yes, my sister came and saved the day here.
No, my daughter.
Welcome. And Holly, if you want to just tell a little bit about yourself. We've been talking for 40 minutes, but we'll let you jump in and tell a little bit about yourself.
I am a retired police officer. Worked with Chris and worked with Jay. And I retired 19 years ago. My son was in the military, and when he was falsely accused, I went down there to see what we could do to help. I was astounded at the way the military justice system works. It's unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable the way that they treat these guys. It was really something. But because I was a police officer, I agree with Arvis. I definitely want women who have actually been victims of crime to get justice. It's just that you cannot claim that your consensual act yesterday was non-consensual today. You have to make a decision. Women bear responsibility. Equal rights means equal rights, that we should bear the same responsibilities for a bad decision yesterday. And you don't send someone to prison for it. Okay. And then in the military, well, what happened in Andrew's case is one girl made a false accusation, and they knew it was a false accusation because there was no evidence. They purposely did not even, for instance, she stated that he held her against the wall by her throat. They took swabs of that wall, but they have to this day have never tested them. Why? Because they know she's lying. They know that they will not get DNA off that wall. They went to the, I was struggling to get on here, so I'm sure I told you, they actually brought in a subdermal camera from Quantico, Virginia, to try to find this bite mark, she stated. They could see the layers of her tattoo, but no bite mark. Okay, they went all the way out to the bar where my son liked to drink. It's called the Red Door Saloon in Destin, Florida. And they asked what had my son, they listened to my son's calls with me. They're all recorded when you're arrested. And they said, what did his mother want you to do? Why did she call you? And he said, she just wanted us to keep the bar receipts so that we could see who was drinking what, who was buying the drinks, etc. Okay, they drove all the way out there, 30 minutes, because they wanted to try to charge my son with obstructing justice. The guy said all she asked us to do was to keep the bar receipts from tonight. Those investigators didn't ask to see the receipts, didn't ask for a copy of the receipts, because they didn't care about getting evidence to prove that he wasn't buying drinks and plying this girl with alcohol. Okay. Everything that would help him, they purposely made sure not to collect. The 4,000 messages between him and the first accuser while he was in Africa, that was on his BlackBerry. Yeah. When they found that what was on that phone, all the explicit sexual things she's asking for, all the nude pictures she's sending, well, they destroy that phone. The prosecutor destroys that phone. The phone is destroyed while it's in the hands of the prosecutor. All of that evidence would have shown the true nature of the relationship. Okay, they couldn't have that. So first of all, they put it into evidence, and it's supposed to be in a Faraday bag so that it can't be accessed. Okay, they found it, broken chain of evidence, broken chain of custody, just laying out on somebody's desk. Well, that major took it and she started it. She saw it still works. She turned it off. She put it in a Faraday bag. She put it back into evidence. When it came out of there, suddenly it didn't work. It worked when she put it in. Suddenly it doesn't work. And so they're going to do a chip off. And when they decide to do the chip off, NCIS volunteered to help. FBI volunteered to help. No, they hired their own company who destroyed it. So you see, I mean, it's just stacked against you. And once they have you, okay, forget the appellate review is probably not going to overturn it. The appellate review is only looking for procedural errors in the trial itself. They are not looking for the truth of what's going on. Nobody cares about the truth. They still.
Holly brings up a good point with one of the changes they made to the law is there's something called factual insufficiency. So it basically means the facts are insufficient to support the charge. Is they greatly restricted how the courts could look at it, because that's primarily how some of the cases are being overturned. Mm-hmm. There were cases, a case, for instance, with mental health, where the military knew that a young lady was getting therapy for falsely accusing people. So she knew she was falsely accusing people. She was getting therapy. They turned that evidence over the day before the trial, and then they dropped it because they basically were playing chicken. They said, hey, take this plea agreement, take this plea agreement. The person said no. So the day before trial, they go, okay, she's in counseling for false accusations. And then they drop the charge. So it's what you're hearing over and over again in Andy's case and others. They're hiding evidence, destroying evidence, not allowing it because there's pressure to get convictions regardless of what the evidence shows. And then once they're arrested and put in prison, they hesitate to let them out under any circumstances. And it's
one thing too in Andy's case, he has a right to a speedy trial. And I think they held him, how long was it, Holly? Over 200 days.
344 days. 344 days before trial.
I mean, that's not the right to a speedy trial, and it baffles me that nobody sees that.
He gets arrested in one part of Florida, and he's an OSI special agent, so he knows lawyers. He's been in court and lawyers. So rather than leave him there, okay, where he could hire a lawyer he knows, they ship him 5 hours away to a Navy brig in Jacksonville, Florida. So our family hires him an attorney with JAG experience, now civilian, in Jacksonville. As soon as we do that, they move him 5 hours away from his attorney and put him in a civilian facility. Okay, now, and the lieutenant colonel in charge of the legal office stated, I know that Santa Rosa County Jail makes it difficult to have conversations with your client. Please let us know if you have any problem. Okay, she knows that he can't talk to him. Plus, Santa Rosa is actually accused of starving prisoners later. My son lost 40 pounds during that 60-some days he was there.
Wow.
Okay, that's right. And then they moved him to North Carolina to a brig there. They never put him close to his attorney again, making it difficult. And because he's a very smart agent himself, he would be able to help in his own defense. They took that possibility away from him. He started to think he wasn't even going to come to trial. They were just going to keep him from trial forever because it was a year. The judge, I guess they have the same 120 days that we have in a civilian thing. You have 120 days if somebody's in custody to bring them to trial. And then if you don't, you have to dismiss the case. Right. Well, the judge realized that they were past their 120 days. And he said we were about 30 days past. He allowed them to dismiss the case, but then he held him while they filed the charges over again, and they added 4 more charges. So the government screws up, violates his rights, and ends up in a more aggressive position against him because of that. It's unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable. And when we had Article 32, which is a grand jury, like the grand jury for the civilians, and I sat in there and I took notes, they didn't like that. They didn't like that I was taking notes. And so during the trial, our attorney asked us to not have me in because I think as a law enforcement officer, they were aware that I would know what they were doing was just unconstitutional, just unconstitutional. So I never got to sit in and listen to what was going on. I had to count on my dad, who hard of hearing to know what was going on. So
Wow.
it's unbelievable. It would be comical if it wasn't so tragic.
Right. And
so many lives are ruined. So many lives. And Arvis will make a point. You're a proud American soldier. You join the service because you love the country. You get your education. You're prideful. That you're serving your country. You end up, because of these rules in the military, with a dishonorable discharge and having to register as a sexual offender. And so many of our guys just commit suicide because they can't deal with it.
Right. Your life is ruined. And, just to share some of what they go through is, imagine not being able to take your child to Cub Scouts or school or meet their teachers or Disneyland or any theme park. I know Cedar Point's big for the Ohioans. And so you can't do any of that. It's difficult to find employment. You're often underemployed if you can find that. It's very difficult to find housing. And you not only are on the registry, you got a dishonorable discharge too. And I tell
not only that, it's on social media for the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life. And you can't travel without your neighbors knowing. Your kids aren't getting invited to parties. You aren't getting invited to anything. You're a social pariah. And I'll tell your audience 3 reasons why you should care. Number 1, if they can't be honest and fair with your sons, then how can they keep you safe? 3 questions I always say. Number 1, if the best and brightest know that they won't be treated fairly, will they join? I say no. 2, if the best and brightest are already in and they know they won't be treated fairly, will they stay in? I say no. 3rd question, if the best and brightest won't join and the best and brightest won't stay, who will be left to defend you? That's 1 reason why you should care. 2, it's the financial windfall that a lot of these false accusers are getting. That's your tax dollars. You should care about that. And then the 3rd and final thing is, this is having an impact on recruiting. And if they don't get the manpower and the woman power they need, then they will have a draft one day. And when they do, they're coming for everybody.
Wow. That's a horrible thing. And from the Article 32 hearing, he was already in jail when the Article 32 hearing went on and stayed there. They never let him come out to.
Yeah, they shipped him to Jacksonville. They brought him back for the Article 32 in March. Then they sent him back to Jacksonville. Then in May, when they were supposed to start the trial, and the judge says you're over your time, they made that a motion hearing. They had like 25 motions the defense filed in my son's case. The judge rejected them all. Okay, we can't even go into that judge. And then they kept him there, and they put him in Santa Rosa County Jail, which was right there in Florida, which is separating him from his attorney now as they're going forward to try to, go to trial. We were supposed to go to trial then in July, but the judge had a Guantanamo case, and he wouldn't give it to anyone else. He signed it to himself because he was the head trial judge, and this is an OSI special agent that he's trying, so he does not want to give that to anybody else. So that made my son stay in pretrial confinement 2 more months till September. He got arrested 10/10 of 13, and he went to trial on the 14th of September, a year later. Plenty of time for them to find the felony record that Chris and Jay found. Plenty of time, but they never turned it over. Now they say, when I brought this up with my congresswoman, that they kept this information from us, that General Vernon states that we had that criminal record 1 day before a post-trial clemency request went in. Okay, after the trial, they give you a post-clemency review, and you can ask the convening authority for some mercy on the deal. Okay, Shalimar Addy was the captain who did that whole 23 pages, okay, post-trial clemency request, and she signed an affidavit. Chris signed an affidavit. She never got it. She never saw that felony record. We would not know about it if we hadn't hired Chris and Jay. They'll never tell you. And if we didn't keep fighting, we found out so many more things. so many more things because we keep looking and we keep fighting, but they're not admissible anymore because we didn't use them in trial.
Arvis, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. How many levels of security do you have to go through to be an air traffic controller in the Air Force?
I'm not certain. I'm not certain how many levels. I do know that.
I mean, even if you go through one level and they do a basic background check,
right,
you're going to find that charge.
I will tell you, we have the utmost trust in an air traffic controller. I mean, second only to like a pilot. So I would imagine it's higher, but I don't know. Holly jogged my memory, and I was looking for the quote. Apologize, I looked away. So Andy's trial judge had a quote that I like to give. This is the head trial judge of the Air Force. I'm going to paraphrase it because I couldn't find it, where he basically said, we can't get consent anymore, right? And now it's not even enough to have consent. So that's the head trial judge of the Air Force at the time. We can't get consent, and now it's not even enough.
It's not enough today to get consent to have sex. That's what they said.
And so think about it. That's the head guy, and he's saying that, and you're like, wow, like where do you go? And so, but Chris is right.
Yeah, where do you go?
What's that?
Where do you go? I mean,
you cannot win. It's like fighting Goliath. You cannot win. They will not listen. Arvis has said they would like to find some way to save face and to look like a hero.
Right.
That's impossible. But you continue to look like a villain, military, and the longer you continue to ruin these men's lives.
So think about
what
this.
They need to do is they need to step up and say, we made a mistake.
Sure.
And they're never going to do that.
And guys, here's how I believe the military thinks is we all grew up watching Westerns. I was always a big Western fan, being from Texas, doing that thing. We loved it. They think white hat and the black hat. And so if you have somebody who's the good guy, you need a villain. And so in this case, there's so many levels of villains. It's hard to find who's going to be the good guy and who's going to be the villain. And then you have to punish somebody, right? Who are you going to punish? The investigators, the prosecutors, the judges, the commanders, Congress, all the way up to, like I said, President Obama was the big start. Biden kind of perpetuated it as well. And Rich, what most people don't realize, it happened at the university level too, to a smaller degree. So here's the example I give people. So there was a Dear Colleague letter from President Obama, and he took away due process. What does that mean? That means that the accuser would have an attorney, the accused didn't. The accuser could present evidence, the accused couldn't see it. He couldn't cross-examine. And so it created a bias in the system. When President Trump came during his first term with Betsy DeVos, as Secretary of Education, all they did was balance the scale. If you give this one attorney, you got to give this one. They both can see the evidence, they can cross-examine, and then all of the lawsuits went away because it was fair.
Right.
President Biden comes in, he changes it back. And then President Trump comes back in, he balances it out again. What happens in 2028? So the difference was the military, it changed and it never stopped.
Right.
And so that's what I tell the American people is if you accept this injustice today, then you welcome it to your loved one tomorrow because it's coming.
Got a question in the audience again. Is there any resource for a military member past the military appeals court, for example, SCOTUS, and can a veteran sue the DOD for wrongful prosecution and receive compensation like some states are doing?
You could, in theory. I would tell you, and we talked about this a little earlier in the broadcast, is the Department of Justice defends DOD in federal lawsuits. And so one of their tactics is delay, and delays can be costly. So I personally have known of cases where they've spent their life savings and they never even got their day in court because of the delays and the money that's spent. So yes, in theory, it's possible. I would tell you practically, I have not seen it. But yes, in theory, you can sue DOD to try to get compensation.
And Chris, your question on the security clearance for ATCs, it's secret level, so it must be able to obtain a security level, not maintain, obtain and then maintain. So they can go in without one. But security level, you're still getting a background check, but it's usually a local background check because they don't want to spend the money for the wire.
Well, and let me share something about that. Oh, I was going to say she was 18 when she got convicted, so it wasn't like she had a sealed conviction. She was 18. My understanding,
and it wasn't a juvenile record.
It wasn't a juvenile record. So they would have, if they were doing a secret clearance, a 10-year background check, I believe, if it's still the same, they would have seen it.
Yeah,
they should have seen it. That's a fraudulent enlistment. It's a reason to fabricate. And then once she gets victim status, she's going to get that VA disability. She's going to get all those benefits and all those perks. And the slate is white.
And more.
And more.
Yep.
And so that's the crazy thing, Rich, is that, look, I realize it's hard to believe us. What we've asked for is an independent review of the evidence. Now, but once you do that independent review and you see we're telling the truth, we want you to go punish the false accusers. We want you to go punish the command, all the people who perpetuated it, and try and give these men some of the dignity back that you took away. And I'll say this last thing. We had a woman who worked for the VA who came to us. There was a false accuser she introduced us to who admitted she lied. So, but the young man had killed himself, and the military would not give him the justice in death that he deserved in life. And nothing happens to her. She's got some mental health issues going on. And the VA was told not to flag false accusers. And that's you got people who have legitimate injuries who can't get VA support, but you have someone who just, all they have to say is they were raped with zero evidence, and they're put at the front of the line. And that's the fourth reason why your audience should care.
And there are other examples where false accusers have said, I lied. They won't take it back. The military won't switch it around. One of my sons, he had one accuser that came forward and accused him of this woman who was going to be the air traffic controller. Then they recruited people to try to balance her story out. She was so much of a liar, and the evidence showed that she was so much of a liar. They needed to find somebody credible. So they went to his partner, who was his sometimes girlfriend, and she did everything she could, including writing a 3-page letter to the convening authority of the base, stating that she wanted no part of this trial, mentioning that they took her phone with an illegal search warrant. She is an OSI special agent herself. She had just completed the advanced course in sexual assault investigation. She stated she did not feel that she was a victim. They coerced her by using her own misconduct and holding that over her head and offering immunity. They coerced her. That's a crime. Coercion is a crime. And that's what they did. They ruined that girl's career. And then the other girl that they brought in to put him in pretrial, they easily could have seen that wasn't factual. She's told the investigator when he came, she was 100% willing every time. Then any time that he suggested something she wasn't comfortable with, he respected her opinion. You know, he never forced her to do anything. He never took advantage of her drunk. But somehow they made her into an accuser.
So
Rick, this is a lady. This is a lady that has advanced sexual abuse training at Quantico at the National Center, and they're pretty much pushing her training aside and saying, "You don't know what you're talking about. We do."
Wow.
And they make her be a victim. That ruined her career.
And Rich, what they're both describing is preponderance. So the military gets a case, they know it's weak, they know it, and so they play the where there's smoke, there's fire. So we'll go and we'll talk to every person you've ever dated or interacted with, and then we'll dangle these carrots out, and we'll see if others will take it. And so the more accusers you can put in front of a panel, then maybe you'll get them to get you a conviction. That's one of the tactics they use. They use it in Andy's case. They use it as a pretext to put him in pretrial confinement, so that he couldn't mount a defense. And so I call it where there's smoke, there's fire attack is what they do with preponderance. So yeah, they do it in many cases.
Wow. Let's start wrapping up
They
here.
went all the way back to high school. They went and spoke to every woman he'd ever known all the way back to high school.
So if anybody's got an axe to grind, right, You spill someone's milk in third grade, they're coming for you, right? It's you didn't let somebody sit in their favorite seat on the bus, and they're like, I can get paid. What? Oh, heck yeah, he did it. He did it. And what's crazy is it's anything, right? It's, you said something to me. Let me just explain a little bit about sexual harassment. Let's say you and I are telling each other a joke, Rich, and the door is closed. We're in an office. If somebody's outside of that door and they overhear that and they're offended by our language, that could be used as sexual harassment, right? So I don't know if you were in the military, you use any profanity. I know I did, right? I know I used some profanity. Is what kind of work environment is that? Where you can't trust your partner to your right and your partner to your left. It's, you're not even talking to them, but they're offended by something they overheard you say. And then they classify it as harassment. And I'll throw one other caveat in. There have been false accusations of other things too, including racism. I know a young lady, she's a little older than me, but she retired. She was accused of being racist. Now, her husband's black, their son's biracial. So when the investigators found that out, they go, oh shit. Like, it's hard to say she's racist against when she married, like she's doing this racism thing wrong. And so they changed the charges just to get her. And so again, I didn't work with her during her case trial. That's why I didn't count her. But the false accusations goes in different directions where it's like, wait a minute, you accuse her of being racist again, but then and she didn't even bring up her marriage. She was like, look, this person did this and I was punishing them. So Rich, what we're finding is another reason people are falsely accused is if you go after them for not doing their job and they want to stop, now it looks like retaliation. So they'll file a charge against you. And so we also see some of those cases too.
Or as we start to wind down here, I want to give each one of you about a minute to give your final thoughts on this, and then we'll go to my final two questions. So you start, Chris, you can start first.
I want to go just real quick. I want to go back to you hearing about stepping outside the door and hearing stuff. The neighbor could hear Andy urinate in his toilet from her apartment.
Yeah.
So this lady's saying they're screaming and yelling, and he's hitting the wall. He's got her up against the wall. She's kicking the wall. This lady heard nothing, not one word. No yelling, no hollering. She didn't even hear anything that would make her come to the door and open it and check to see if anything was okay. That was another puzzling piece to what they had in evidence or lack of evidence.
Wow. It just keeps getting worse. All right. So, Chris, what's your final thought on the falsely accusing?
Well, like I said, I go back to I believe these people should be held accountable if they are found to be making a false allegation. The only way you're going to stop this is by making them, by charging them or having some type of retribution to where they're going to have to spend time in jail, pay a fine, do something. And I know why they're thinking about this, because they don't want to keep people from reporting the truth. And I'm afraid that's what they're looking at. They're afraid people won't report if they start charging these people for false allegations. So, yeah, but I think Andy needs to be out of jail. I mean, he's been there long enough for something that he didn't do. So
100% on that one. Holly?
I have two little things, and the first is that my son and his partner, that the second accuser that they used, had just arrested 9 drug dealers, and that's 9 airmen on the base at Hurlburt Field dealing drugs to other airmen on the base. While he was in Africa, his partner took 2 of those to court-martial and got guilty verdicts, and those guys were doing their time. As soon as he was accused, in 120 days before he was even charged with a crime, the convening authority of the base demanded that those 9 cases be dismissed. 3 of those guys were on the prestigious Airmen's Council that's handpicked by the convening authority as future leaders of the Air Force. And I wonder if one of those 3 One of those 9 was a legacy, someone whose father, grandfather, great-grandfather had all served, and that they might have something to do with my son's excessive sentence. And then the other, which is really a strange little extra thing, this judge had 4 years of his Guantanamo cases overturned because he was putting in for a job with the Justice Department after he retired from the Air Force, and the Justice Department was the prosecution against those terrorists. One general stood up and spoke out to stand up for the terrorist rights. No one in the United States military is speaking up for our boys, for our actually fighting men signed up during wartime to defend their country and got caught up in a political agenda. Which one of these military men is going to, which one of these commanders is going to stand up for our guys? That's all I got to say. I want my son home. I want my son back.
Arvis?
Rich, I want to thank you and your audience, the Misfit Nation, for having us on and for listening. And the request I would make of the audience is to please share this video, like it, comment, send it to your congressperson, send it to your senators, and share it as broadly as possible so that this information comes out. And definitely people who have family members or interested in the military, make sure they see it. And if you have been falsely accused and you have evidence to support that, please reach out to the show and they'll reach out to us and we will help you in any way we can. So thank you guys for being here.
The problem is,
it was a pleasure. Pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much.
You're not done yet.
Sorry for the trouble. Okay. I'm not a tech.
The last question I ask my audience, my guest every time is, what's 3 things the Misfit Nation can start doing tomorrow to be better humans? And if you all want to just hit one, let's see what you got.
I'm sorry. What was the question? What was it again, Rich?
What's 3 things the Misfit Nation can start doing tomorrow to be better humans?
Oh, wow. I'd say stand up for each other. Look out for each other. If there was more of that in this country, we wouldn't be where we're at.
Holly?
Yeah, I would say listen to people. Listen to the whole story. Don't jump to conclusions. Listen to the whole story.
And Arvis,
follow the evidence.
And I would, just to piggyback on those 2 things, I would say when you do see something and when you do listen and when you do, is speak up. Is don't be afraid to speak up so that people speak.
Thank you, Arvis. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Holly, for taking your time tonight to share this amazing stuff with us. It's heart-wrenching to know what those young men are going through, being falsely accused, and you as well, Arvis. You went through the whole trial and tribulation of it, and to see that you guys are fighting for this, it brings a little power to our hearts, to our heads, that notice people are like you are out there. We have shared both your links to Teresa's Tapestries from Teresa Carpenter and Change.org. Teresa Carpenter is a great guest on the show as well. So I'm glad that she pointed me in your direction to have you on here. And thank you for sharing everything you did tonight.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good night. Good night, Misfit Nation. We'll see you on Sunday.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.